How are you doing?
I'm doing well, alhamdulillah. Just good to be here, good to be able to talk to everybody. So, inshallah, my voice is very low. So I said this, the other day when I spoke Saturday, but I'm like super shy. I grew up very, very quiet. I have a huge family, but always was very reserved, very quiet. So my voice is very soft. So I really, really would love if people just lower their voice. So, inshallah, you guys can hopefully hear me talk.
MashaAllah. So are you like when you were quiet and shy, were you like the middle child? Were you the first?
Yeah, I was the fifth child of eight,
Oh,
and literally always trying to fight for my mother's attention because I was never old enough, to command the room and get everybody's respect, but not young enough to be treated like a baby. So I told this story, on Saturday. I have to do stuff like give my mom foot massages, to get some time with my mother. So
oh man. You were struggling. Foot massages, you're in deep.
yeah, I was down bad for sure, but I'm really good at giving massages. So
Alhamdulillah. Excellent. It's good to know.
yeah.
So you've been in Houston for 2 years now?
Yes, this is going on my second year now. So alhamdulillah, been a year as of last April.
And you grew up in Florida.
Yeah, Tampa, Florida. Yes,
So
sir.
how you liking Houston?
The weather is the same, so I'm used to that. I love like I know it sounds crazy, but I love like the humidity. I love just like the warm. You don't got to put no lotion on. You just
Yeah.
relax. So I actually enjoy like just being in this type of weather. I actually enjoy the city a lot. There's no like clean ocean, no disrespect, but
Yeah, yeah.
there's no clean water. Like I'm used to like just going to the beach. It's beautiful. Me, I grew up homeless for most of my life, so the one place that you could go that was free was going to the beach. And my mom would take us to the beach for Eid, for every holiday, anything birthday related. You're going to the beach. It was a free place to go. So yeah, the water out here isn't like that. So
No, no.
no,
Galveston.
yeah, definitely. Anybody who's ever told me about Galveston, just drive by Galveston. They never told me to go to Galveston.
There's a visit there. I mean that's powerful. You grew up homeless most of your life. You
Yeah,
didn't even say like for a year of your life. You said most of your life.
out of the 18 years, as a growing up as a kid, I spent the last 8 from the time I was 10 years old up until I graduated high school. In homelessness and poverty. And my mother and father, just a little bit about myself. My mother and father converted to Islam or reverted to Islam before I was born. And I actually lived in Saudi Arabia for 2 years, from the time I was 4 to the time I was 6. My father, some way, somehow, he didn't even graduate high school, but he ended up, meeting the Prince of Saudi Arabia, became an English teacher, and he still actually is an English teacher overseas in Saudi Arabia, but has never graduated high school. So,
Okay.
I mean, that's the biggest blessing for sure. But my mom and my father got divorced when I was 10 years old, and at that point, my mother became a single mother with 8 kids, and being a single mother, period, for one child is a lot. But for 8 children, I couldn't even. I think two parents, four parents might struggle with 8 children. So at that point, we were all over the place. I slept in the car, I've slept in motels, slept on people's floors.
Were you guys always together, moving around?
Alhamdulillah, for the most part, it was a point where I was 12 years old where a couple of my siblings went to live with my grandmother, who had more like, she had a house that was more stable. It was my father's mother. And a couple of them, the older ones, went to live with her. So it really, towards like that latter part of my life, 13 and up, until I got graduated high school, was me and my younger siblings. I have two younger brothers and a younger sister, and then I have three older sisters and one older brother. Um, but kind of through that point, like I said, kind of bouncing around from different places. I would even going to school back then. I would have to take the city bus at least 2 hours, to get to and from school because the shelters or the motel we were staying at was so far away from the school that I was going to. And I remember it wasn't until I got to high school that I even went to the same school. I went to a new school every year from the time I was in kindergarten all the way until I went to 8th grade. So a part of me, I told you guys I'm very soft, I'm very shy. Excuse me, not soft, but shy. And I say that in the sense of like, I was always like the happy-go-lucky kid, always smiling. My mother called me Smiley O'Reilly. My grandfather is actually Irish. It's an Irish white man. So, my mother, is black and Irish. So then obviously same for me. When I was a baby, my hair was literally orange. So she called me Smiley O'Reilly. And oh, subhanAllah. But as I went to these new schools every single year, and I'm having to create new friends and new relationships every single year, I just, truthfully, I think I just turned sour, toward to the world, and I really just took it personal. And so, I remember sixth grade being that year, and my mom's, talking to me, and she's like, "Oh, did you meet any new friends at school or whatever?" I just remember telling her like, "It doesn't matter. Like, I'm not going here next year anyway." So that's kind of where I got to that point of like very soft spoken, not really talking a lot.
I was gonna ask you like, what was your mental state like going through all of that? So elementary school, you're happy, still that childhood innocence. Now sixth grade, you're starting to get, kind of aware of what the world, what other people have, and what you don't have, and what the world hasn't given you, right?
I think it was very tough. Like even you talked about, the story of Musa and the man that he followed around, and that was, when I remember when I first read that story, like it hit so hard for me because that was my life. I literally just remember, even as you were telling the story again, just the memories that of my life that flooded into my mind that just I never forget. I was about 12 years old when this happened, but my house had burned down. It was my grandmother's home. We were staying in the home. It was actually during Ramadan, and it was just me. I have three older sisters, and
That's your father's mother's house.
this is actually my mother's house. So this is my other, grandmother. And my sisters, I have three older sisters, and they tried their best to cook. So I'm used to hearing the smoke alarm go off because they always burning something. And it's like I said, it was during Ramadan. So my sister had cooked some chicken on the stove, and I remember she left to go to work, and it was just me, my two little brothers who were probably 7 and 8 at the time, and then my newborn oldest niece. At the time, she was probably a couple months old. And I remember staying in this house. It was an old home with a lot of like the burglar bars on it. So the windows, everything had these metal bars on them, and there was a skinny hallway that led to two rooms, and all the boys were on one room, all the girls were in the other room. We didn't have any furniture, so we slept on the floor, but alhamdulillah, like we have a roof over our head. And I remember like hearing the smoke alarm keep going off. And I'm just thinking like, dang, like what is she burning, right? Like my sister was used to that sound. And then, just after it continuously going off, I just remember opening my eyes, and as I open my eyes, I just see like black smoke covering the entire ceiling, just coming all into the room, all throughout the hallway. And the thing about it was, smoke it rises, so I'm on the ground. That's why I didn't understand, like I didn't know what was going on until I'm looking up and seeing all this smoke. And as I like look down the hallway, I just see like this amber glow, and I crawl down and go through the hallway to get to where the kitchen was and the front door. And I just see the entire kitchen just engulfed in flames. And I'm sitting there trying to figure out, like, we already were bouncing around from place to place, being homeless, but now this is really like in the truest sense that we were about to be on the street, like homeless. And I remember trying to put the fire out. I couldn't put it out. And I remember just grabbing my little brothers one at a time and having to run through this fire, and then going back, and just something told me to just check the room to make sure. And my niece was asleep in the other room. Alhamdulillah, I was able to get her and run her out the house as well. But I remember prior to that, when I was 10, my mom, we stayed in this motel that was right next to this CVS. And this kind of goes into, the story of Musa a little bit. And my mom, we were already struggling so much. And my mom would constantly, this homeless guy, his name is Mr. Jones, and she would give him money every single time we would go to the CVS. And I remember I would be so upset with her because I'm sitting there thinking like, we have nothing. Like there's 8 of us. My father left. There's 8 kids. Like, what are you doing giving this homeless dude money? He's just sitting there begging for money every day. Like every day he was out there. And every day, whether it was with my mom's food stamps or with money that she had, whenever she saw him, she would give him something. And I'm just sitting there. I remember I asked her, I'm like, why do you do that? And she's like, there's people who have less than you, and you don't know, what they're going through. You might be going through something, but they're going through something as well. And alhamdulillah, you at least have, a roof over your head. She would constantly just give me all these continuous, lessons and speeches as to why she was doing this. And wallahi, it's just so crazy because the day that my house had burned down and my mom had came back home, obviously, because, called the fire department and everything, and they call her and she picks us up and we're driving and we go to the same CVS that we used to always go to. And sure enough, who's out there? Mr. Jones, the same man who's homeless. And, my mom, he's actually asking my mom, oh, how have you been? It's been a year since I've seen you, whatever. They're talking back and forth. And wallahi, this man, come to find out, he never told my mom this, but he was homeless by choice. So he just chose to be on the street or whatever. But every time my mom was giving him money or anybody gave him money, he just collected it. Like he just had the money with him. Like he used to wear this. It's in Florida as well. So I told y'all it's humid, it's hot, but he always had this big old like jacket on, like just bundled up and sitting in his wheelchair. And wallahi, I never forget. We're sitting there at the 7-Eleven, or excuse me, the CVS, and this man pulls out $1,000 to give to my mother.
No.
So for 2 years, I'm watching my mom give this man money, water, whatever, and in this moment where we literally lost everything.
Right.
I have nothing, and this homeless man that my mother's been giving money to that I'm mad about ends up giving her $1,000 when I know, God knows how much money she ended up giving. It probably gave him back every dollar that she gave him. So just even that story, when I'm listening to the story of Musa again, it just brought back that memory for me because I instantly thought of my mother and just how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless you and the most weirdest, way that you couldn't write the story, you couldn't think about it, you don't know how it's gonna possibly happen. And that was essentially my entire life as I continued to go through my life.
That's an incredible Jerry story, man. Mr. Jones with the trench coat.
I'm trying to tell you, like, I'm trying to go find Mr. Jones right now. I need some more. I hopefully got another blessing for him.
Mr. Jones, there's something for you with $10,000.
I'm telling you. If you need some money, man, just go to the CVS in Tampa, Florida.
Allah. Your mom, you said that they called her. Was she working?
Yeah. So my mother, I mean, you have 8 kids. I mean, I think any mother, especially a single mother, you have to find a way to make ends meet. Like a lot of the time, she would never be home. So even, another part of that, another thing that I thought about when it came to, the story of Musa was my father. I remember my father, I begged him to let me play football. Obviously, everybody knows I'm the NFL player, all those things. I come to this match shit all the time. I I try to stay as low key as possible. Nobody really pays attention. And then as soon as Saturday came, oh, he plays football. Oh. So now every time I come to the match, assalamu alaikum, brother. So it's just funny, but obviously you know me as that now. But my father, when he was still in my life at the time, he didn't want me to play football and he wouldn't let me play football. So the entire time I'm sitting there begging him to let me play football. He said no. My father leaves, my family at 10 years old. And in the moment, that sounds terrible. Your father leaving your mother with 8 children, that's horrible. Especially, as a Muslim, it's just that's a tough thing to even speak on. Um, but to say that if it was not for that, I very well probably wouldn't even be sitting here, wouldn't even be able to say that, now my mother, alhamdulillah, lives a really good life. I'm able to provide for her, provide for my family and everything. And it all started from something that would be perceived as terrible from, a father leaving their family. So just like I said, to go back to my mom, she would constantly have to be working, constant hours and hours. So that's kind of what allowed me to play football because she was like, listen, I can't watch you. I don't know what you guys are going to be doing. So if you can go play football and the coach is with you, supervising me for a couple hours until I get home, fine, like, go ahead and play. But she didn't want me to play. She didn't like seeing like me hit people or people try to hit me. So I remember I told this story the other day as well. My grandfather had signed me up, told the coach I was super fast, I had hands like Jerry Rice, like all these crazy stories. And I'm sitting there listening to him. I'm just like sitting there terrified because I know I'm not good at this point. But I remember he tells the coach all this stuff. We get off the phone. I'm like, why did you say that? Like I slap him upside the head. I'm so upset with my grandpa. And the next week we go to practice, and I had to take a city bus to get to practice. And when I got to practice, this coach is like, "Oh yeah, we heard what the grandpa said. We gonna see what you talking about." Da, 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 da. Like this big old coach, and they put me with the biggest group of kids because of what my grandpa said. And I just remember we do like these Oklahoma drills where you basically are just two guys just running at each other, just trying to see who can hit who with the hardest. and this white boy with this big old mohawk just laid me out. I remember I'm sitting there on the ground. My breath is like, I lost my breath completely. I'm just sitting there like, yeah, I'm not coming back. I knew, at that point, like, yeah, this isn't for me. So I remember I took the city bus back home. Like I'm crying the entire way back home because at this point, I'm thinking like, wow, like I told my mom, I made this promise to my mom that if you let me play football, I'm gonna make it to the NFL. I'm gonna be able to help our family. And my first day out, I sucked. I get ran over. I quit the team, and so when I get home, like I'm just dreading talking to my mother. And I remember when I opened the door and my mom's asking me how did it go, I just burst into tears. Like I couldn't, like, cause I was 13 years old, I couldn't, just, it was the first like heartbreak that I felt, of just like, kind of just adversity hitting you really hard in that way. And I remember, I just told her like, I went out to practice, I suck, what do I do? And she was like, all you can do is trust in Allah and work as hard as you can. I'm like, well, what if I trust in Allah and work as hard as I can and I still suck? Like, then what? And then I remember she told me something from the hadith. I can't cite the hadith properly, but she had told me that which is for you shall not pass you by, and that which passes you by is not for you. And a lot of people who say, that you can't accomplish something or you can't do something. Yeah, alhamdulillah. And people who tell you you can't accomplish something, usually they're not willing to sacrifice what it takes. And she's like, if you just trust in Allah and do your part, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of everything else. And so in that lesson, I learned two things. One from my grandfather is you got to have confidence. You got to believe that you can actually achieve something. But then from my mother is that you have to have trust in Allah and also do your part. And so for me, that kind of started that real story for me to just like even when you spoke on earlier when you talked about people who say that they work really hard. It's like, yeah, I know I worked really hard. I have 7 other siblings who were in the same situation as me. And, specifically my younger brother who I ended up being the legal guardian for my 2 little brothers when I went off to college. But I remember training them every single day when I was training myself. And wallahi, my little brother Abdurrahman, he had the same mindset as me. He worked really hard just like me. He broke his arm and his leg the same time. Like it just was not, it wasn't meant for him. So I say that to say, like, when you spoke on that hit me as well, because I always, ask myself, like, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala choose me to be that person? And so I carry that burden a lot because in my mind, I'm like, always trying to make sure that, you know, with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed me with, I use it properly and I represent, myself and my faith, correctly. So um, from that point on, kind of took that whole year off to train and actually get better. And I trained by myself. I didn't have a trainer. I would go outside and just train my little brothers and myself. Came back and played that next year. Alhamdulillah, was really good. Ended up going throughout high school. I talked about this a little bit on Saturday too. In high school, because of my being homeless, and I would take the city bus 2 hours. I would have to drop my little brothers off at school, get back on the bus, and then go to school. So I wouldn't get to class until like third or fourth period. So my GPA for my first 2 years was literally like a 1.5. It was terrible. So I couldn't even play on the high school team. And I remember like when I finally decided like, okay, if I want to take football serious, if I really want to, take that next step, I have to like commit to everything that comes with what I want. Um, and so I remember that whole spring, I just continued to work on my academics and everything. Alhamdulillah, I actually ended up graduating with like a 3.5. So that was a huge jump for me. But got my GPA up to be able to play. And I remember I had like a 2.1 on the dot. Just to be able to play, you had to have at least a 2.0 for that following spring. And went out for the team, was really, really well, played really, really well, started to get scholarship offers, ended up going to college in Florida Atlantic University, which is in South Florida. When I went off to college, that was the first time I had my own bed to myself, my own room to myself. So I remember the entire freshman year that I was in college, and the coach who recruited me is actually the offensive coordinator for the Texans right now. But I remember my whole freshman year in college, I just would sleep on the floor. Like I wouldn't sleep. I would sleep on the floor because I felt so guilty about having my own room and about having my own bed when I knew my little brothers and my mother, were sleeping in the car, sleeping on the floor in a motel. Like it was like the guilt inside me. I couldn't help myself. And I remember,
Did you share your room with somebody else?
no, like that's what I'm saying. It was the first time I had my own room, my own bed. Like it was great. It was like,
Oh, you were on scholarship.
you feel me? Come on now. Come on. I had a full ride scholarship. Like,
Yeah, you had a good room too.
I mean, I literally, so I was like on top of the world. I never forget. And I told this story actually earlier to my friend because I still have this email. But the first time I ever had an email was when I went to college, and it was like my school email. I remember texting my mom, like, look, I got an email. Like, text my email, send me an email. Like, I was just happy to have an email. I'm like, heck. But yeah, like I was on cloud nine, but at the same time, just feeling so like guilty because I'm thinking about my family. And I actually ended up going into my sophomore year, just continuing to get worse for my mom with my two little brothers. Because for a woman to try to raise men by herself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never ordained it to be that way in the first place. That's why, marriage is a man and a woman. Um, so it was just a struggle for her. So I remember taking my two little brothers, going to the courthouse, signing the papers and everything to become their legal guardian. And I literally would have them, like I raised them from that point on, and they stayed with me in my dorm room. I took them to school every morning. Would go to practice, go to class. After class, pick them up from school. I would pick them up from school, take them to their practice when I had them trying to play football.
So you were like a 20-year-old dad.
But I literally was like a 17-year-old, an 18-year-old dad because I graduated at 17. My freshman year of high school was 18. Yeah, I was 19 years old, basically, being a father. So it was kind of funny. My mom always said, like, I think you'll be a great father because you already raised kids. And I'm like, I think that's why I probably want to wait on kids. But, I ended up, you know, being their guardian throughout college. And, this time while I'm in college, I'm a freshman All-American. I'm one of the top linebackers in the country.
How did you do all of that?
Allah, like, there was nothing that I can tell you because just like it just goes back to even what you just spoke on again, like earlier. I did my part. I never drunk to this day, and I've never been to a college party. I never smoked. I never did any of those things because for me it was something that I knew I was trying to achieve, and I just knew it wasn't right. It wasn't in my heart. Like every time I ever even had like the I guess like somebody coming to me or the peer pressure to say, hey man, like, oh, we just won this big game and I'm one of the top players in the country and I got the entire campus is always cheering for you, wearing your jersey, and people want you to go out and do all this stuff, and for me it just never sit right in my heart because I knew it wasn't right. So I just chose not to do it, and I think just the strength, I would constantly have to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the strength to stay focused on what I wanted to do. And I think now more than ever, especially in the position I'm in now, it's not, Florida Atlantic, it's one of the top NFL teams, in the league. And, I'm one of the top players in the entire NFL, one of the highest paid at my position in the entire NFL. So it's not like, I got my little campus that's, at my fingertips. Now it's, the entire country. All these people know you. Wherever you go, people know who you are. And you can, if you want to be that type of person, which there are people like that a lot, especially in my industry, that it gets to your head. People think they're somehow bigger than life because of somebody else cheering you on or because of a sport that you play, but really just my faith has been the biggest thing that's allowed me to just stay grounded, and really just always remember that no matter how much money I get, I think it's just that. Thank you. My bad, I talk a lot, so yes, that's I think that's an indication like we probably should stop. But just kind of for me, just a reminder, like, no matter how much money I make, no matter what I do, I'm no greater or lesser than the next person. I've literally been on two ends of the spectrum. I've been literally the lowest of the lowest from a financial standpoint, poverty standpoint, and I've literally been, now in the 1% of 1% of people my age group, period, or even people in general. So I think just seeing those two ends, it's just crazy because Islam is it's the balanced way. It's not too far left. It's not too far right. Like people assume that, I used to think this as well, and a lot of people in poverty think like this, where it's like, in order to be successful, you got to be a terrible person. Like you can't be a good Muslim and be,
Yeah.
so for me, I think that was something I always strive to do, was to, show people that you can do both. And it might be a little harder. It might be a little harder because you have to take avenues that it would be easier if you took the sleazy, shortcut. But when you try to do something the righteous way, Allah puts more blessing, more barakah in that. And so I just try to stay that course.
I'm really interested in, said your mother was working and she's got 8 kids, but you have such a solid Islamic background. Most, not most, but a lot of parents struggle to have their kids have an Islamic background even when they're both at home. How was your mom able to pull off? Was it like, she thinks back, what was the way that she taught you guys? Or was she the main teacher, or was there somebody else?
I think early on, it's one thing, like even with my father, because I know even from the story where I talk about my father leaving. So yes, from that aspect of things, that's not right. But prior to that, while he was in my life, he was most of the um, just the teacher for us, and kind of just the principles of Islam, learning everything. And I think from my mother, where I more so learned was just the heart, like the actual like compassion that you're supposed to have as a believer, and just kind of like living it more than reading it. People say you got street smart and you got book smart. I think I learned a lot of book smart, about, the faith from my father, but I learned, just that God consciousness on the way that you move from my mother, because talk about her giving the money to the homeless man constantly, like that wasn't necessarily something that she, did from, she explained it to me as to why she did it per our faith, but her action is what I saw the most, just in her heart and the way that she was, as a woman, the way that she is as a woman. Um, but then, kind of when I got to college, that's really, especially for me, I was born Muslim, growing up Muslim. A lot of us who, alhamdulillah, you're born into Islam, you you are almost like you take it for granted almost, because you just do what you're told. Your parents tell you to pray, you pray. If you don't pray, I'm gonna whoop you. It's like, okay, like you just do what you're told. And then at that point where I'm now in college, like there's nobody telling me what to do. There's nobody telling me when to pray. So at that point, I really had to ask myself, like, what am I studying? What am I reading? What am I believing in? And I remember that's why I really started to take a deeper dive for myself into my faith, as far as like what I what I'm believing in, and what does this mean to me. And I think it's just something that, alhamdulillah, like Allah guides whom He wills. And for me, it just was something that I just drew close to, because even as I went throughout college, I talked about being one of the top players in the country. And as I'm
Not only
going,
that, you're in South Florida.
exactly.
South Florida is like the worst of the worst.
Hey, chill, that shit.
It's there. South
Yeah,
Florida is fitness central.
there's a lot of, yes, there's a lot of distractions. There's a lot of distraction. But like I told you, I like the beach. That's all I got to go to the beach. I ain't going to the new beaches. I'm just going to the beach to look at the water, dip my toe in the water a little bit. Like that's what I was doing. But
Are you swimming?
no, I actually cannot swim. Sorry. That's why I said dip my toe in the water. I didn't say get in the water. To this day, I really can't swim, and that story is.
You got a brother, he'll get you right. You got a brother.
See, so you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, like that story of me not being able to swim is
Yeah,
yeah.
no, we got a brother who's a swimming coach. So
Oh, no. See, I tried that. At this point, you know how when you can't teach a old dog new tricks. Like I'm the old dog that don't want to learn no new tricks. But no, as I'm in college and I'm, like I said, one of the top players in the nation, all this stuff. I remember my junior year of college, I finished, I have a really good season. And, the coach comes to me, he's like, hey man, like, you have all these scouts looking at you. You can go to the NFL draft right now. We probably get drafted in the fourth round, which in the average for a fourth round pick, you'd probably make almost $700,000, $800,000 a year. And it's so crazy because in the a fourth round pick is $800,000 a year. A third round pick is $1 million a year. Second round pick is 5 million, somewhere in that range. First round pick can be anywhere to $20 million a year. And I remember sitting there like, I want to try to go back to school, to come back for my senior year, to get drafted higher, and then I would be the first one to graduate from college if I stayed. So I decided to stay and get my degree as well.
And that's always a gamble, right? Because you might get injured and then everything gets thrown out of you down.
Yeah. So we about to go there.
Oh,
So exactly what he just said is exactly what actually happened to me. So I stayed for my senior year, and truthfully, I did it more because I think I was afraid, because that was the first time where I wouldn't be guaranteed the security of, being in my own dorm room and, having, stable meals. Like I made that decision more out of fear than anything. So that was always something that I told myself after that I would never make a decision because I was afraid. Because if I said I trusted in Allah, then I would make that decision and be full head of steam. So I ended up coming back. I got my degree, but halfway through the season, I completely blow my knee out. And at this point, the entire season, the coaches are like, "Man, you're cruising. Like I'm having a great year. You're cruising. Like we just keep doing what you're doing, man. You easily top 2 rounds at best, third round pick or at worst a third round pick, which I said was $1 million a year." And I ended up blowing my knee out. And I remember those 3 days after I did that were like some of the darkest of my life. I remember just sitting there. I didn't do anything. Like, wallahi, I couldn't even muster up the strength to like get up and pray. I blew my knee out, so I can't even, prostrate. And I just was so low, like mentally, physically, emotionally. I was just ready to like give it all up. And I remember just after those 3 days, like my mama, anybody who I talked to, my sibling, I couldn't look anybody in the face because I felt like I let everybody down. All I could do was cry. And I remember just sitting there, and the only thing I thought of on that third day was, that child that I was when I was 12 years old, when I came home crying to my mother and telling my mother, I suck. What do I do if I can't, if I'm not good at football, whatever the case may be. I just remembered that same hadith. That which is for you shall not pass you by, and that which passes you by is not for you. All you can do is trust in Allah and do your part. So I just remember like on that third day, just telling myself like, you already feel like you're at your lowest. So at this point, like why not try and do what's got you this far, which is trusting in Allah and doing your part. So I started to do rehab, just slowly mending myself, rehab from a physical standpoint, but then also from just a spiritual and mental standpoint. Like I would literally just go to the masjid and go to rehab. Like I wouldn't want to do anything else because I was trying to reconnect, and regroup myself and just kind of get regrounded. Because as you start to, it talks about this in the Quran where if Allah puts even a little bit of hardship, how we cry out to Him and all these things, and if He just removes it, then you act like you never knew Him. And even in the moments where you think you're remembering Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, a lot of times we have to be mindful because even myself, I fell into that where when it's all good, now that prayer that you were supposed to make at whatever 8:15, you got a game or something, and so now that 8:15 turns into 8:45 at halftime. When we get to halftime, I'll go and pray, and then so I had to like really like just look myself in the mirror and ask myself like, what am I doing? What am I looking for? Because a lot of people, even like you talked about, you know, uh, if good is not good if it leads you to hellfire, and evil is not evil if it leads you to paradise. And so in that sense, I see it like this, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He loves all of us, and He's going to try to do whatever He's going to bring you close to Him. So in your mind, you think, me thinking playing in the NFL or being really good at football is going to help me, make me feel better. But if that's drawing you further away from Allah, then maybe that's not what you need. And so I feel like in that moment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was bringing me closer to Him to prepare me for everything that I am right now. And in that moment, like I couldn't understand it. But as I continue to go through that journey and be where I am now, I wholeheartedly believe that if it wasn't for those type of moments, I wouldn't be so grounded in my faith and be so like self-aware to reflect and check myself, constantly to just renew my intention.
Allah. Jeff, this is I've been eating up all the time with questions myself, but I wanted to open up the floor as well for everybody. If you everybody has questions for Aziz as well.
Yeah, I'll say this, like, I have no problem answering any questions. I don't have nowhere else to be, so if you guys have somewhere to be, that's fine, but I'm fine with answering whatever.
Wow, man, you good? You think you ready for a late night? Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead, Doc.
Uh, so my I'm from Bubble in New York. Yeah, I swear to ass that when B-17 is throwing those bombs over you guys, how does it feel? So
Brother, you must not have watched the game. Yeah, that might have been one of the best games I had. I dropped 2 interceptions, but I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
this is a question. So how like before you play the game, it was just talking about how much faith matters to you. Like, what's sort of your mindset of like how your faith carries you throughout the season? If you're like going through a rough patch, or if like very situation where there's so much on the line, like you guys are about to play like the Kansas City Chiefs for like the 2 seed or something. Like, how does your faith carry you through moments when you feel like you're being challenged for one and all?
I think I draw a lot of like strength through a lot of different, I guess, outlets. Or I think one of them, obviously the things that are going on in Gaza. Uh, like for me, every time I played a game, obviously I supported everything, and I think for me, like when I would play my games, like that's what I would think about. Like I'm over here worried about a football game, and how tough this opponent is, and their children, men, women, being bombed, killed, starving every day. So I think I drew my strength even when I was going through some of the craziest things I was experiencing, whether it was, being hurt. Like throughout the season, you play with a lot of injuries. Like, it's so funny, but like I will come to the match. I told you I hurt my knee, but I've also dislocated my elbow. I've tore my labrum. I've had so many different injuries through playing football, and so there's times where I literally cannot pray. I had to sit in a chair. I'm 27 years old. Everybody see me. Oh man, all these muscles. Wallahi, it's times where I literally, and wallahi, like sometimes I literally, like during the season, I don't even want to show up to the masjid because I'm so tired of the brother saying, "Brother, what are you doing?" I'm like, I can't. I promise you, I know I'm not joking. I'm not lazy. I just can't. So I think it's so funny because like in those moments, like at the end of the day, I have a job just like you. When you go to work, every day you don't get up and you're not happy to go to your job. Some days you're happy, alhamdulillah. Some days you like, I don't want to do this. And I promise you, I have a sand day. But then there's people like this guy who just can't wait to see me get beat by number 17 from the Bills. So I have to show up and do my job, alhamdulillah, to the best of my ability so guys like him can't make fun of me. Yeah.
They're analysts, but also, I mean, the Bills lost to the Ravens, or really lost the Chiefs today.
I digress. That
I have two questions. Both was should a colleague find other Muslim friends to surround yourself with? And the second one was were there people part of like that like a belief in you that kept you going?
To answer the first question, no, it's actually crazy.
Just repeat the question so everybody.
Oh, I apologize. Yeah. Well, the first question she asked me was, I have any Muslim friends in my community while I was in college that I kind of stayed close with? And that answer is really no. Like I would go to the masjid. There was a masjid that was down the street, but there wasn't really. I didn't have any friends. I would say that were Muslim only because I was raising kids. Like I literally had zero time for almost anything. So the only friends I really had were my teammates, and the one teammate I have, he's still one of my best friends to this day. He was like a very, 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 very like faithful Christian. Like he just hardcore Christian. And I think what I respected so much about him was the way he went about it. Because a lot of times, I got friends who, especially in my industry, where everybody got the Jesus piece and everybody got the cross iced out and everything. But I know how they're living on a day-to-day basis, and it's not righteous. So um, for me, with my friend, we stuck really close together because he had the same mentality. I still try to give him dawah all the time and we debate all the time. So I'm still trying to get him, inshallah, to accept Islam one day. But his heart, he just has a big heart, and, he has that God consciousness, even if it's, misguided a little bit. So that's who I actually stayed close to. And then the other part of your question was, did I have anybody in my life that kind of helped me to keep going and was like motivating me and believing in me? I say yes. You know, I told you two of the people was my grandfather and my mother. I think those two people specifically were the biggest influences for me because they were there for me and like believed in me at a time where truthfully I didn't believe in myself. And I think I drew a lot of strength from that, especially when I got to the low moments. To this day, I still talk to my mom at least once a week. And during the football season, my mama calling me every other day. I read this article. This person said this. Then she calls me before the game. You know, every single game before I play. I don't care what's going on. I need to talk to my mom because she's you go out on that field and you get them better like sad words and
Watch the games now.
oh yeah, she watches them now. And I told this the other day on Saturday, but she's only been to prior to me getting into the NFL. She had been to one little league game and I lost the championship game. Then she went to one high school game and I lost that playoff game. Then I go to college. She goes to the college game. I actually did win, so I forgot. I did win this championship in college. But then I go to the NFL my rookie year, end up playing in the Super Bowl when I was playing for San Francisco in Miami, which was 30 minutes away from the apartment that I stayed in, where I was crying because I blew my knee out not even a year, prior. And we ended up losing that too. So my mom, she has a bad ratio. So, but I love her to death. I wouldn't change it, but for
I
sure.
don't believe in the decision.
I know, right?
Yeah. See what you're asking? Oh, we got a mic. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's really inspirational of resilience and post-traumatic growth. And Allah surely blessed you. I was wondering if you've ever considered writing a book about your life story, which,
Um, I really have, and I always said I would. Um, I think it's just I spend so much time like with football, and when I'm not, playing football, I like to do a lot of things in the community. So I think like I need to make the time to do it, but inshallah I will.
Go ahead.
First of all, thank you for being here and for like literally bringing the thunder. My
She couldn't wait. She could not wait to say that. I know you were holding on to that.
I was
From the town that-
reading and I saved the line.
Okay.
Like, but the NFL is something that we watch every day and it's very entertaining, but it also is a franchise that can contain a lot of toxic masculinity that is at odds with Islam model of what a man and what a person should be. So how would you manage to, as you said, go to work every day in that kind of environment while maintaining a strong moral compass of Islam's masculinity?
I think that was a great question, and I think a lot of it is kind of like what I said, is just really staying close to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, staying close to my faith, and even when those situations come up, because in a locker room, NFL locker room, there's all type of conversations that go on, the good, the bad, and the ugly. This person got 3 baby mamas, this person got 3 strippers. So it's like there's all type of nonsense that can go on. And I think the biggest thing is just staying close to my faith because like I said, I come to this masjid a lot and I just pray and read the Quran and go home. So I try to think the biggest thing for me is just keep myself occupied with things that I know will bring benefit, not only to, me, but, to others and, to my soul. Cause I think obviously you fight a lot of that battle with like what your flesh is desiring and what's good for your soul. So a lot of the times, you're going in that spiritual warfare, and I think in that environment that I'm in, being in the NFL and being in the entertainment industry, period. Like I know y'all see what's going on with Diddy. Like there's a lot of crazy stuff going on out here. So, like you just gotta really cling on to your faith and cling on to people who are like-minded, who have the same mindset as you as well. And like I said, for me, that was my Christian friend, at that time because there was no Muslim friends around me. But, alhamdulillah, me, when I first came to Houston, one of my teammates who's no longer here, his name Ali, he plays for the Tennessee Titans now. But he brought me to this masjid when I first got here. So alhamdulillah, like how far I've come in a year when my first time coming to this mosque was because of Ali. So, it's people like him that I clung on to that had the same mentality as me, is in the same industry as me. And you just try to stay around those like-minded people. You're welcome.
Alma, and like they're going through so much and being at point of escalating, then you keep such a level-headed mindset, and it's just very like the easy mistakes.
Appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Like it's taking part to do that, especially with like once you reach that level of like it's something that I find so interesting because you went through all that and then you reach this hot pinnacle, which is the NFL, which is like the 1% of the 1%. And for you to still hold your faith that close to you, be that humble, it's not something you see with a lot of athletes. Even the ones who are at that level, who even have gone through that, but they so simple, so you're excited us. So it's like really amazing to see, mashallah.
Well, I appreciate you, but I appreciate those words too. And I think, like I said, a lot of it is just really staying close to your faith because your time is gonna go 24 hours. Like all of us, everybody who's here right now, you could be doing anything else, and every single day you have the same 24 hours as, inshallah, you have the same 24 hours as the next person. And so for me, it's just about making that decision. Like I said, am I choosing, what, my flesh is desiring or what's convenient or what sounds cool or fun? But wallahi, like I find more joy in doing things like this. Like people are like, oh brother, I'm so sorry you had to get up there and talk for so long. I would rather be at the masjid talking and hopefully trying to inspire somebody else, and making somebody else's, emotions and feelings better than doing God knows what in Houston.
Oh, that's the Sunday is a was nice. So on this question, question to ask you is regarding the history of pulse after injury. So I understand it. So going back to your foundation, your sources, basically using this measure and destabilize the the injuries you're facing was going back to the master and was and going to therapy alongside with how do your belly is resting this course. What other reason was it that kept you good task?
I think for me it was just like the goal that I said I wanted. I just remember, like I said, when my mother told me when I was 12 years old, and it wasn't just, that was just for you, should not pass you by, and that which passes you by is not for you. But then also, people who often say you can't accomplish something aren't willing to sacrifice what it takes. Well, it's like, dang, like, what am I actually willing to give up for what I say I want? And I know what I'm not willing to give up, and that's my faith, that's my man, that's everything that I am. But am I willing to give up going out and being at parties and am I willing to go through some pain because there's a lot of pain, and I know obviously me, you talked a couple times and you understand that knee pain, especially when you have the injury like me or you have had, it's tough, and there's a lot of pain involved in that, but I was willing to sacrifice that, uh, to try and pursue what I'm doing now, especially in the situation that I was in, financially and with my family. I think that I just wanted to change my family's life, and try to take care of them. So I was just willing to sacrifice whatever other than my man. So yeah.
So, so, so I had a quick question. Your last name is Al-Shaair, which means the poet. So have you or your family members have done poetry before, or?
Yeah. No, yeah. So, crazy enough, I have like some of these weird facts about me. Like I think when somebody asks me about my life, that's kind of why it's tough for the sister to ask me about the story. Me writing the book. It's so hard because I feel like I don't know how I can fit my entire life into a book unless it's like a dictionary or like something super big. But my grandfather actually was the official poet of Florida. So my father, he has statues all over Tampa. But
Grandfather?
my grandfather, James Tokley Sr. So when my
The
father,
Irish?
no, he's not. This isn't the Irish one. He's black. He's black, bald head, beard. So this is my father's father. So when my
James Toby, you're not gonna look up his stuff.
yeah, well, so when my father became Muslim. Him and my mother, reverted back to Islam. That's where Al-Shaair came from because just that thing where it'd be like son of a carpenter or son of a whatever. So that's why my father chose Al-Shaair.
Son of a poet. MashaAllah. Or why Ethan? Great question. Yes, go ahead.
So we know Boko is your higher generation. Your Andy Alakanda's culture.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
I was gonna say that you are academic Boko Hanzagai there. But what was your college degree and why did you choose that?
So my plan was football, and it was so funny because I had my college coach, Lane Kiffin. Uh, this is recorded, so maybe X out his name. But I remember he would always say, "School first, football second." You got me? I'm gonna say it again: school first, football second. And I remember the first time he said it, I was like, "Yeah, school first." Oh, that's what he meant. I'm joking. So I mean, for me, my goal was football. It always was that. My degree, I got in exercise science and then public safety administration. So for me, I wanted to be like a trainer, like on the sidelines for the games. There's athletic trainers, and I wanted to be an athletic trainer because I love sports. And then after playing sports, I realized I would never want to do that child. So right before I was about to graduate, my senior year, I ended up switching and doing public safety administration. So truthfully, when I got that degree, that was more so because of the house fire that I went through as a kid. So for me, I always said that okay, if I didn't play football, I would want to be a firefighter and like save people from house fires. But even with that, what I saw was one thing, I'm afraid of fire, so I don't know how that's gonna work. But two, I think I more so care about helping families, who are going through hardships in general. I think a lot of what I do just in the community in general, and I'm all over the place. Like I really don't have a single cause that's just one cause. Like I don't mind helping anybody in need with anything. So I think the biggest thing that I more so cared about was like just giving back. So if I didn't play football, which is not your question, but I guess people ask me this all the time, what would I want to do? I would just say probably like run like a nonprofit or something.
So we very close. But we did it. Hey.
So yeah, so my question was, have you ever like expected any obstacles or like challenges or misconceptions as being like a Muslim in like a professional setting that caught you off guard? I could say on behalf of like everyone here, we've never been whatever will to have like an NFL arena or an NBA like in the field.
Hold on, now speak for yourself. That was like it's little kids. I know the adult. Anybody who's bald right now, that I agree. It's over. But there's some kids in here. I don't know what their dreams are. Inshallah, inshallah, there's somebody out here that might want that. But I think
You said like question like anything like caught you off guard as like being a Muslim and in the professional setting.
yeah, so when it comes to like I said, being in this environment that I'm in, my job and my career, um, I think I never forget this. When I was going into the draft, they have a profile, and in your profile, it literally is like a mini slave auction. Like they have everything to the arm size, how long your finger is, how much you weigh, every little thing, every little detail about you they have, and they write up how they think about you. And I remember in the history of the NFL, nobody has ever talked about somebody's faith. And in my description of my thing, I remember at first it can truly just made me so upset. It pissed me off, truthfully. And I'm reading it, and it's like he is a devout Muslim who fasts during the month of Ramadan. Da, da. I'm like, bro, talk about my career, like talk about me as a player. And I remember when I first read it, it was just like I took it as a slight at first because I was so upset. I'm like, that has nothing to do with me as a football player. And then like as I sat there and I continued to just think about it and think about it, I'm like, they have never done this and thought as they looked at a player to think about them as and look at their faith and see how devout they were in their faith and write about that and something that's supposed to be about football. So I actually took it as like, wow, alhamdulillah, like for them to see that and think, wow, I've never met these people, but them to know just from everybody they talked to and asked about me, oh, he's a devout Muslim. He fasts for the month of Ramadan every single year. So even if I'm playing football, it didn't matter. Like I know people, a lot of my friends who just work, corporate jobs are like, brother, I can't fast. Wallahi, I gotta go to my desk, man. Like, dude, I'm sitting out here in the sun every day, still fasting. So I think that was just probably like the biggest obstacle is that you are different. Being Muslim, you're gonna stand out, and I think you have to be okay with standing out. And I had just got more comfortable with being who I was.
Let me switch. Again.
Man, you down bad right now.
Just press it once. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sure. Boom.
Um, what make you wanna be part of the Texans, and what made you realize that you're famous?
Okay. So the truth is, when you're like playing in the NFL, it's like I said, it's a job. So if you have somebody saying that they'll pay you $20 an hour and somebody else saying they pay you $40 an hour, I don't think you care. As long as it's obviously halal, I don't think you care what the job is on the $40 an hour. You just take the $40 an hour. So the thing that made me play for the Texans, it was very simple. They paid me the most money, alhamdulillah. No, but truthfully, they actually didn't. They didn't offer me the most. There was another team, the Commanders, Washington, that offered me more money than Houston. But the head coach of Houston, D'Amico Ryans, he was my coach when I used to play for the 49ers. He was my position coach. And every day when I was a rookie, I talked about me tearing my ACL, I ended up going undrafted. So instead of the millions of dollars I was projected to make, at the end of the day, it's already written, it's already written. So at that time, I ended up going undrafted completely. And he's the first person that called me when I ended up going to San Francisco. And it was like, man, congratulations, we're happy to have you. I was like, nah, screw that. Y'all got me messed up. And I messed up my money. I remember going back and forth with him. And when I ended up going to San Francisco, he was so tough as a coach. He was really hard on me, but he wanted to see me be my best self. He brought out the best in me as a player and as a man as well. So I came here partially because of him, and just the culture in general. And then when did I realize I was famous? I don't know. I can truly tell you, I don't know. Actually, you know what? I will say this. The one time where I actually felt cool for 1 second was a couple years ago. I went to Paris. I took a trip to Paris in 2022, I think it was. And I remember literally like being at one of the little places. I think it was the Louvre or something like that. It was a big old glass building or whatever. And I just hear somebody screaming Azeez. Like I just hear somebody screaming out my name. But I'm 1,000% sure. I mean, I'm not the only Azeez in the world. So I'm not big-headed enough. Like I said, I try to not think that I'm the only person in the world with the name Azeez. So for sure, nobody knows who I am. I'm in Paris. I'm not in America. And I keep hearing these people screaming Azeez. But I'm like, this must be some little kid named Azeez running around who's lost or something. And this entire group of people just runs up to me. It's like, I knew it was you. It's Azeez. It's Azeez Al-Shaair. Da, 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 da. They had all this stuff of, all these things about me. And I don't know how they were able to recognize me at that time. But I mean, I think that was probably like the coolest moment. Because then I was like, oh yeah, look, I'm in Paris. This guy knows me. So that was probably the coolest moment for me. Oh yeah. Oh, sure.
So I used to work in like the sales field. That one of the biggest ways people would celebrate, whether it come like birthday, they percolate, just the culture here is you go out, drink, you go out, party. So I guess that this is if you want to have like what I get it, people took it as like the negative thing. They like this girl's weird, like who cares? It's tighter vibe, but grown and sound was right years ago, why do you care? Second, I guess how do you celebrate that? Because sometimes you have to go to these functions, or you don't have to, but you feel forced to because your boss might be there, a connection might be there, someone that could get you from 0 to 100 is gonna be there. So how do you, or how did you, or how do you today navigate through that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Especially, I think just in that corporate space or in that space as an adult, not only just say corporate, but in the space as an adult when you're trying to find a way to make money and you're trying to elevate, especially when you're at the bottom of the totem pole, you're working your way through that, ladder. I think the biggest thing is just nothing literally, like, and I say this truthfully because it was decisions that I had to make. I don't care how much money it would have been. I don't care how cool it sounded. I don't care who felt like I was lame. I don't care who felt like, oh, he's trying to separate himself. Like, I just, I was willing to sacrifice a lot to be where I'm at, but my faith was not one of them. Like, that was, if there's anything that wasn't for sale, it was just my man. And so I think anything that, tugged on that, it just, what's in your heart, what's right and what's not. So you feel that feeling, everybody has that feeling when you're doing something you're not supposed to be doing, even as a little kid. When they stealing some cookies or something out the cabinet, they're constantly like looking over their shoulder because you just feel like you're doing something you shouldn't be doing. And I think just for me, every time I felt that, like I didn't care, like and I still don't. Even now, like I have to pray, and it's in the middle of one of our meetings. I'm leaving my meeting because I gotta go pray. I'll be back in 5 minutes. And at first it was like, where did Azeez go? And then it turned into, oh, okay, yeah, you need to go pray. They're telling me when it's time for me to pray. So I think what happens is when you talk about somebody, like you're like, oh man, when this is a very important person who's supposed to help you get to where you want to, that which is for you shall not pass you by, and that which passes you by is not for you. There is no man on this earth, no woman on this earth, no person who could get you somewhere that Allah has not ordained for you to go, and vice versa. So for me, how can I try to gain sustenance when the person who, when what's control of everything, he who is control of everything, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, can say be and it can be. And I think we get so, especially as we get older, we almost become like, what's realistic? We almost become too realistic, because what is realistic? Like, Allah has only put in our heads what He's allowed us to understand. And even when talked about uh, Him introducing Adam alayhi salam to the angels and talking about how He's going to create human beings. And they're like, oh, why would you do that? The angels are talking about, why would you do that when all they'll do is create fitna on earth and da 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 da. He's like, I only allow you to know what I allow you to know, what I allow you to know. So it was Adam who ended up telling them their names, the angels their names. So I said that to say, like, with Allah, there's no limit or no cap on anything. You talk about your boss, maybe your boss can help you get to a certain pinnacle, and that's about it. Everybody on this earth has a ceiling. But with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is not one. And so I just really, really always try to just trust that if I gave up this thing that maybe can be a shortcut to what I want, but I know it's not the right way to go about it, that Allah will bring something that's better for me. And He has. I mean, I went from being, like I said, undrafted, making literally, to put it in perspective, I told y'all about the 800,000 millions of dollars. You know how much I ended up getting to go to San Francisco? $8,500. What? $8,500 one time to go and try out for the team. I wasn't even guaranteed to be on the team, and I had two little siblings. They're my children at this point that I have to provide for and take care of. That I had to leave with my coach back in Florida while I was going off to San Francisco. So in my mind, I'm like, I don't know how the heck this is gonna work, but I have to trust in Allah. And sure enough, like I said, a year later, I ended up playing in the Super Bowl, 30 minutes away from the same apartment that I had to leave, and leave my little brothers in. So I think just trusting in Allah and just be willing to sacrifice what it takes, as long as it's not your faith.
Last question by Kap Pasha.
I have a loud voice. It's okay. Right. So I actually have two questions. The first one, subhanAllah, sounds like you've gone through a lot of traumatic events from a very young age. And oftentimes, many other people will break under much less. So my first question is, how did you let your experiences make you and not break? And then second one, hold on, I can't remember. Okay, it's all right. And then the second question, how do you give back to the community, especially as someone who went through a lot of hardships at a young age? How more about helping those who are in a good position to you from like the next generation?
So the first part, I know you have a very loud voice. That was actually really good. But in case somebody couldn't hear, because I heard a bit, but um, just talking about how did I allow, all the things that I went through to not break me, but kind of shape me into who I am. And I think the truth is, I did feel broken at times, like even, you talk about like you're a man, like it's never here. Like we're here, we're up, we're down. Like this is life. Like, and in life, this is not paradise. Perfection is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, you are constantly struggling. It's a battle. And I think every time that I felt like I was veering right or veering left, like that, everybody has like the lane assist now on the new cars that will help bump you back into your lane if you're falling asleep or something. And I think for me, that's what, Islam has been for me, just to wake me up every time that I started to slip or started to lose hope or started to feel myself a little too much. You get around your friends and everybody's telling you the man. And you're like, you know what, maybe I might be that guy. Like, then you start feeling yourself, you're like, hold on, you tripping. Same way how when I'm really, really low and I'm feeling like I'm worthless, that same thing is like, hold on, man, you tripping. Because the answers are all in one book, alhamdulillah, in the Quran. And so I think for me, every time that I felt like I just wanted to just stop, it's just something, it's like, man, like I know for a fact that I can find some type of benefit whether it was just me going on YouTube and looking up a Islamic lecture just to listen to, or whether it was me opening up the Quran, or whether it was me just crying and praying. Uh, I think you really have to be like a child. As a child, you can believe you could fly and be a unicorn and all types of things. And I feel like that's the type of, you know, trust and faith that you have to have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because he can literally, like I said earlier, he can allow anything to come from nothing. And the biggest thing is just like believing that it's a possibility always that he can do something for you that you could never have imagined. And then to answer your second part of your question, as far as like, what do I do in the community? Honestly, I do so much, and I say so much in the way that it's like a big net. Like I don't have just one cause that I help. There's a lot of different organizations and places that I donate money to that are just truthfully just one-offs. Like doesn't matter as far as that's two mics that died, so I think that's definitely our call to keep going. But basically, sorry, I appreciate that. Basically, I just give to a lot of different causes and try to do things, whether it's something like this or whether it's actually, having like a camp, or whether it's just donating money or just spending my time, just sharing my story and answering questions like yours. Because there's a lot of people, and I remember myself as a kid, if I could talk to somebody, who was successful, especially a successful Muslim, it would motivate me to be better. So that's what I try to do.
Exactly. Addigi sa Berisha? Is it? That everybody their time. Okay. So we'll break for Isha inshallah ta'ala. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you, Azeez, for joining us tonight. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam.